A man stands on a hilltop in what is now northern Pakistan, in the salt range above the river Jhelum. The year is 1023. He raises an instrument to his eye, and he does something that should not be possible for anyone in his century. He measures the size of the earth. No ropes stretched across deserts, no teams of surveyors, no caravan of assistants. One hill, one angle, one man, in a piece of mathematics so clean it still works today. When he is finished, he will have the radius of the entire planet, and he will be wrong by less than 1%. Now here's the part the story always leaves out. The man on that hill was not there by choice. He was, in every real sense, a prisoner. His country had been destroyed. His king was the man who destroyed it, and the army he traveled with had come to this land not to measure it, but to strip it bare. This is the story of Abu Rayhan Al-Biruni, and like everything on this channel, we are going to open it at the accounts page. Start with who he was, because the size of the loss only lands once you know the size of the man. Al-Biruni was born in the year 973 in Khwarezm, a rich, cultured land south of the Aral Sea. By his 20s, he was already one of the finest minds alive anywhere on Earth, an astronomer, a mathematician, a geographer, a historian, a student of languages and medicine and stones. Across his life, he would write as many as 180 works. He was, by any honest measure, the greatest scientist of his century, in any civilization on the planet. And then, in the year 1017, the transaction at the heart of this journey arrived, uninvited. Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, the most feared conqueror of the age, swallowed Khwarezm whole. When Mahmud took a country, he took its treasures, and to a man like Mahmud, a mind like Al-Biruni's was treasure. The scholar was carried off, eastward, to the Sultan's capital at Ghazni, in the mountains of what is now Afghanistan. He did not apply for this expedition, he was luggage. That is the commission behind the greatest scientific journey of the medieval world. It was funded, in the crudest possible way, by a war. So the route begins, not with a hopeful departure, but with a forced march. Follow the line south across the map, from the green oasis of Khwarezm, over the mountains, down to Ghazni. At the far end waits a court dazzled by gold and bored by geometry. Mahmud traveled scholars the way he collected jewels. They raised his prestige, and beyond that he had little use for them. The accounts that survive show the Sultan treating Al-Biruni coldly, even testing him to embarrass him. This was not a patron who loved learning. This was a warlord who happened to own a genius, and barely noticed what he was holding. For Al-Biruni, the bill was already settled in full before the real journey even began. His homeland, gone. His freedom, gone. His years now the property of a man who cared far more for his next raid than for the true shape of the sky. Because the next raid always came. Between roughly 1017 and 1030, Mahmud crossed into the Indian Northwest again and again. By tradition, some 17 campaigns, and Al-Biruni traveled in that baggage train, down through the passes into the Punjab and the valley of the Indus, the rivers of present-day Pakistan. What he saw on that road, he refused to look away from. Mahmud's armies broke open cities and emptied temples of their gold. In 1025, they reached the great temple of Somnath on the coast of Gujarat and left it a ruin, tens of thousands dead, a fortune in treasure loaded for the road home. Al-Biruni watched what the man who owned him did to this land, and then he wrote one of the most damning sentences ever set down by a member of a conqueror's own court. Mahmud, he wrote, utterly ruined the prosperity of the country and scattered the Hindus like atoms of dust in every direction, until their broken remains held the most bitter hatred toward every Muslim. That is the true bill this journey ran up, and the man writing out the invoice was riding with the army that signed it. Now watch what he did with all of it. Every other man in that column reached for the same thing, loot. Al-Biruni reached for the one prize nobody could stuff into a saddlebag. He learned Sanskrit, the sacred and scientific language of the very people being crushed around him. He sat with Hindu astronomers, read their books in the original, and treated their science not as the nonsense of a beaten enemy, but as the work of serious colleagues, to be checked, argued with, and respected. And in the year 1023, at a hill fort called Nandana, in the salt range of the Punjab, he stopped, and he weighed the world. First he measured the height of the hill itself. Then, from its summit, he measured the tiny angle by which the far horizon dips below eye level, an angle smaller than a single degree. That dip and that height are all the mathematics needs. From two numbers taken on a hillside in what is now Pakistan, he calculated the radius of the Earth at about 6,340 kilometers and its circumference at close to 40,000. The figures we get today, from satellites, sit within 1% of his. On the soil of a country his own king had come to plunder, an exile with an astrolabe measured the whole planet and got it right. The measurement was a single number. The book was a monument. Around the year 1030, Al-Biruni finished the Kitab al-Hind, his great account of India, and there had never been anything like it. In an age when the standard way to describe a conquered people was to sneer at them, he opened by promising to set down the beliefs of the Hindus exactly as they themselves held them, in their own words, and to weigh them fairly against the Greeks. He recorded their mathematics, their astronomy, their philosophy, and their faith. He corrected them where he judged them wrong, but he never once pretended they were fools. He is called, for good reason, the father of Indology, the first man to study India as a scholar instead of a raider. He had arrived chained to the most destructive man of the age, and he produced the most generous book of the age. That is the return this expedition actually sent home. So let us settle the accounts, the way this channel always does. Who paid, what did it cost, and what came back? The money came from Mahmud of Ghazni, and it was never really money at all. It was plunder, the melted gold of Indian temples, bankrolling a court that kept a captive genius on the shelf as an ornament. The cost, the true cost, was staggering. Cities broken, tens of thousands of lives, a whole civilization, in Al-Biruni's own bitter words, scattered like dust, and on the personal ledger, one man's country and one man's freedom spent across 30 years of exile. And what came back? Nothing for Mahmud. His gold was spent, his empire was gone inside 2 generations, and his name became a byword for ruin. What actually survived the whole bloody transaction was the work of the prisoner in the baggage train. As many as 180 books, the first honest bridge between the science of India and the science of the Arab world, and the size of the earth, measured from a Punjabi hilltop to within 1%. So, the verdict, was it worth it? Set the 2 columns side by side and the audit answers itself. Everything Mahmud came for, the gold, the conquest, the glory, is gone, dust, in exactly the way Al-Biruni foretold. And everything Mahmud never valued, the quiet work of the scholar he treated as a trophy, is the one thing the world chose to keep. The receipts of the raid bought nothing that lasted a century. The receipts of one honest man's curiosity bought a measurement of the planet, and a book people are still reading 1,000 years later. It was not worth it for India, which paid in blood for knowledge it already owned. It was not worth it for Mahmud, whose treasure evaporated. It was worth it, in the end, only for us, the ones standing downstream, who inherited the single thing in that entire story that was built to last. And it is worth remembering exactly where it was built. Not in Ghazni, not in Baghdad, on a hilltop in the salt range of the Punjab. Abu Rayhan al-Biruni died in Ghazni in the winter of 1048, around 75 years old, still working, still writing, right to the end. He never went home, but he had managed the one thing no conqueror in history ever did. Mahmud tried to own the world by seizing it. Al-Biruni came to understand it by measuring it, and the measuring outlived the seizing. That is the whole ledger of exploration in a single life. The plunder rots, and the honest number endures. Follow the traveler, follow the receipts. Tareekh ka Hisaab, Hisaab abhi baki hai.